Royal security intercepted an unmarked armoured vehicle, attempting to remove the Romanov Diamond Bracelet from St. James's Palace. This was not a security drill. It was the execution of a highly organised operation designed to relocate a priceless national heirloom without public knowledge. Right now, the global media is focused on the newly opened exhibition at Buckingham Palace. Millions are watching broadcasts detailing the vintage silk dresses of the late Queen. But that massive media event is currently serving as an operational shield. While cameras are pointed at fabric displays, a parallel administrative process is actively moving high-value assets out of the royal vaults. Let us examine the precise timeline of this morning's interception. The location was the Friary Court entrance. The transport vehicle possessed clearance codes that were supposedly valid within the palace system. When the driver was stopped at the gate, he did not resist. According to the incident report filed by the security team, the driver simply produced a physical manifest. He stated he was acting under standard conservation transport protocols issued directly by the household's internal management. The commanding officer at the checkpoint did not accept the manifest. Holding a secure terminal with updated operational directives, the officer informed the driver that all standard movement protocols had been completely suspended. The suspension was ordered directly by the Prince of Wales. The officer instructed the driver to cut the engine and step away from the vehicle. The asset was secured immediately. There was no public disturbance, just a swift, rigid implementation of a new, overriding security protocol. Inside the vehicle's secure trunk was the Romanov Diamond Bracelet. This piece was commissioned by Prince Philip using diamonds from his mother's own tiara as an engagement gift for Princess Elizabeth. Under strict institutional guidelines, pieces of this magnitude belong to the reigning monarch in right of the crown. They are not personal property. They require a rigorous, unbroken chain of custody. The fact that this bracelet was sitting in an unmarked transport indicates a deliberate circumvention of that entire chain. How did a private transport firm obtain the clearance to load this specific bracelet? Our investigative team secured the exact documentation. The movement was authorized by an internal transfer request, specifically document number RCT882. This paperwork was not forged. It was formally signed and processed within the system on April 14th at exactly 12 minutes past 9 in the morning. This document utilized a highly specific administrative loophole regarding conservation protocols. Normally, any movement of a primary historical asset requires a mandatory 3-signature authorization. However, document RCT882 exploited a temporary provision allowing items requiring immediate structural assessment to be moved with a single executive signature. It reclassified the bracelet's status from an active display asset to an item pending off-site structural assessment. By changing this single line of classification, the asset was effectively removed from the daily electronic tracking system used by the Royal Collection Trust. It was placed into a blind spot. The procedure bypasses standard oversight because it is logged as routine maintenance rather than a transfer of location or ownership. This means the paperwork looks entirely legal to any standard auditor. It is an administrative mechanism designed to quietly shift control of the asset without triggering internal alarms. The interception at Friary Court proves that this loophole is actively being exploited right now. The authorization required to generate document RCT882 requires top-tier access to the secure inventory system. This indicates a coordinated effort to quietly siphon physical wealth away from the institution while the public is completely distracted by a fashion exhibition. But the Romanov bracelet intercepted on that truck is merely the surface level of this operation. The actual target hidden behind these administrative changes is far larger. Before I open the confidential files detailing the exact financial mechanisms and the specific individuals involved in this quiet relocation of national assets, please subscribe and turn on notifications right now. The institution is actively moving to contain this information, and this broadcast could be restricted or completely removed from the platform at any moment. Do not allow yourself to be kept in the dark. Let us move forward. If you assume this morning's intercepted transport was a reckless, impulsive gamble, look much closer. The individuals orchestrating the movement of these assets are not acting blindly. They have constructed an asset relocation mechanism so precise, so legally sophisticated, that financial compliance officers on Wall Street would take notes. This is not a simple theft. It is a masterclass in administrative maneuvering. To fully understand the scale of what is happening, we need to rewind the timeline exactly 10 days. On April 28, 2026, at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon, a closed-door meeting took place at the Garrard headquarters on Albemarle Street in London. The individual sitting across from the appraisers was Tom Parker Bowles. The purpose of this appointment was not a casual consultation or a routine check. It was to formally lock in a highly confidential, private appraisal. The asset in question was the collection of brilliant diamonds originally sourced from the Cartier Nizam of Hyderabad Tiara. The final, verified valuation document finalized the worth of those stones at a staggering figure, exactly £18,450,000. Why would a private citizen require an independent financial appraisal of an asset belonging to the Crown? To answer that, we must break down the three-step mechanism currently being used to quietly wash these historical artifacts right out of the royal vaults. The first step is blurring the institutional lines. By officially logging an item as requiring urgent maintenance and structural preservation, the managing office effectively blindfolds the Royal Collection Trust. The moment an asset is flagged for maintenance, it is temporarily pulled from the active, daily audit system. It is relocated into an administrative grey area, sitting completely unmonitored by standard security checks and inventory balances. However, simply taking an item off the digital radar is not enough to permanently secure it. You have to alter its legal DNA. This brings us to the second step, the legal trap. On May 2nd, just 4 days after the Garrard appraisal, a highly specific document, known as Directive 77B, was presented to King Charles for his signature. This directive authorized a status change for Queen Mary's lover's knot brooch. With a single stroke of a pen, its official classification was shifted from a Crown asset, meaning it belongs to the state, to a personal gift. This seemingly minor clerical adjustment completely removes the item from parliamentary oversight. It transforms a piece of untouchable national history into private property. The third and final step is the quietest, yet the most effective. Once the lover's knot brooch was officially reclassified as private property, a lifetime loan agreement was drafted, designating Laura Lopes as the sole recipient. This is an immaculate financial loophole. Because the item is legally categorized as being on loan, it does not trigger an official transfer of ownership. Yet, it ensures the asset rests permanently within the Parker Bowles household. More importantly, this specific legal arrangement completely bypasses 100% of standard inheritance taxes. They are not just moving jewellery around, they are utilizing the institution's own internal paperwork to permanently secure generational wealth, entirely out of the public eye, without triggering a single financial alarm. The paperwork for this operation was flawless. Every signature, every directive, was perfectly aligned to quietly filter wealth out of the institution without triggering a single alarm. But the architects of this plan made a massive miscalculation. They assumed the vaults were only protected by cameras and routine audits. They forgot that the late Queen left behind highly observant guardians who operate entirely outside the standard administrative structure. And Princess Anne has never stopped watching. On May 5th, just 3 days before the intercepted transport at St. James's Palace, Princess Anne made an unannounced, off-schedule visit to the core storage facility at Windsor Castle. At exactly 22 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, she bypassed the standard liaison officers and requested a direct, physical verification of the assets pre-cleared for the upcoming exhibitions. When she walked into the climate-controlled room and opened the designated secure case, she did not find the artifact she was looking for. She found an empty velvet tray. Princess Anne did not raise her voice or call a press conference. Instead, she initiated a protocol that bypasses the standard chain of command. Within minutes, a system-wide code red was activated. This is the highest level of internal security alert, triggering an immediate, silent lockdown of all Royal Collection Trust inventories across every royal residence. Nobody in, nobody out, and no assets moved. The empty tray prompted a rapid, localized digital sweep. Security teams immediately pulled the closed-circuit footage for Underground Vault B2, an area restricted to top-tier clearance. What they found on the monitors was not an external breach. It was a quiet, calculated betrayal from the inside. At exactly 3:15 in the morning, the footage captured a figure bypassing the primary checkpoint. This individual used a decommissioned legacy access card to manually override the security sensors in Sector V9. The system quickly identified the individual as Thomas Blackwood. He is the former Deputy Director of Archival Records for the Royal Collection Trust. Why would a trusted former official, someone who knew the exact layout of the security grid, risk everything to open that vault? Our investigative team looked into his current financial standing. Financial records indicate that Blackwood is currently carrying a verified, outstanding gambling debt of £2.5 million. But the most crucial detail is not his debt, it is his social network. Decades ago, Thomas Blackwood attended Eton College. He was in the exact same graduating class as Tom Parker Bowles. The connection is direct, the access was internal, and the motive was deeply financial. What Blackwood removed from Sector V9 that morning was not a minor historical footnote. The empty velvet tray discovered by Princess Anne was supposed to hold the South African diamond necklace. This specific piece carries profound historical and emotional weight. It was presented to the late Queen for her 21st birthday in 1947 during her famous tour of South Africa. It features 21 massive, brilliant cut diamonds. The late Queen cherished this necklace, viewing it as a symbol of her lifelong dedication to the Commonwealth. To quietly remove a piece with such immense personal significance to the late monarch crossed an invisible boundary. It elevated this entire operation from a quiet administrative restructuring into an action the family views as an unforgivable breach of trust. The realization that an internal network was actively stripping away the defining symbols of Elizabeth's legacy changed the atmosphere inside the palace instantly. The period of quiet observation was over. The evidence was secured, the inside man was identified, and the stage was set for a direct, undeniable confrontation. The real fury of the Prince of Wales was not directed at the former official caught on the security footage. His deepest anger was reserved entirely for the individual sitting on the throne. The man who had remained completely silent while his own mother's historical legacy was quietly parceled out and prepared for removal. At exactly 12:30 this afternoon, May 8, 2026, William entered the blue drawing room inside Buckingham Palace. He did not request a formal audience through the private secretaries, and he did not bring advisors. According to palace staff who immediately cleared the adjacent corridors, the Prince of Wales carried a single, thick folder. Inside that folder was the undeniable proof of Thomas Blackwood's escape plan, including his booked flight records and digital communication logs. William walked directly to the king and placed the dossier onto the desk. What followed was not a loud argument or a bitter shouting match. It was a heavy, overwhelming silence that stretched for exactly 14 minutes. During that incredibly tense window of time, King Charles was presented with a stark reality. He essentially had three paths to choose from. The first option was to utilize his supreme authority as the sovereign to protect his wife's network. He could have ordered the investigation closed and dismissed the entire situation as an internal misunderstanding. However, choosing that path would instantly trigger a full-scale constitutional crisis. If the Prince of Wales leaked the dossier, Parliament would be forced to intervene, stripping the monarchy of its financial privacy and causing permanent damage to the institution's public standing. The second option was a quiet, negotiated retreat. The king could have offered to quietly reverse the administrative changes, ensuring the items stayed in the vaults while allowing everyone involved to save face and avoid public scrutiny. But William was not there to negotiate a peaceful compromise. He enforced the third and most definitive scenario. He placed a newly drafted legal instrument on top of the dossier. This document required King Charles to formally sign away his exclusive auditing authority over the Royal Collection Trust. In addition, it demanded the immediate transfer of the 3 master security codes that govern access to the primary underground vaults. Faced with the undeniable evidence of the flight records and the deeply compromised position of his wife's inner circle, the king had no defensive maneuvers left. The silence broke when Charles finally picked up his pen and signed the document. By surrendering those 3 master codes, King Charles effectively signed away his operational control over the crown's physical wealth. As of this afternoon, he has been reduced to a functional figurehead regarding the management of these historical assets. Every piece of jewelry, every artifact, and every financial appraisal now requires the direct, legally binding authorization of the Prince of Wales. The administrative loophole was permanently sealed, but the personal cost of those 14 minutes is incalculable. When William walked out of the blue drawing room at exactly 12:44, the internal hierarchy of the palace had permanently shifted. The trust between the monarch and his heir did not just fracture today, it completely snapped. The king was forced to choose between shielding his wife's operation and preserving the monarchy, and in doing so, the relationship with his son was forever broken. When an individual is pushed into a corner, the natural instinct is to strike back with whatever tools remain available. Faced with the sudden loss of administrative cover, the Queen Consort deployed the single weapon she has refined over the last 30 years: media manipulation. She initiated a highly calculated public relations maneuver, an effort specifically designed to downgrade a severe, undeniable offense into a simple paperwork misunderstanding. At exactly 1:15 this afternoon, isolated in the west wing of Clarence House, Camilla completely bypassed the secure palace switchboard. Using an unencrypted personal device, she made a direct, urgent call to a trusted senior editor at the Telegraph. The result of that conversation materialized exactly 30 minutes later. At 1:45, an exclusive article was aggressively pushed to the front page of the publication's website. The headline was crafted with absolute precision: Queen Consort directs extensive conservation and maintenance program for late Queen's historic jewellery. This was not a standard royal update, nor was it a celebration of heritage. It was a strategic, preemptive legal shield. By publicly announcing a massive ongoing conservation effort, the Queen Consort was actively creating a highly visible, plausible excuse for why certain priceless national treasures were suddenly absent from the secure vaults. She was setting a public precedent. If the king remained silent and the palace did not immediately dispute the story, this article would serve as her ultimate defense. It was a brilliant, desperate attempt to reframe the unauthorized removal of assets as a perfectly normal pre-approved maintenance schedule, effectively shielding her network from any serious legal consequences. But the Prince of Wales was already steps ahead. He did not engage in a quiet, back-and-forth media briefing. He did not leak a counter-story to a rival newspaper or issue a subtle correction through an unnamed source. He utilized his newly acquired absolute operational authority to deliver an institutional hammer blow. At exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, the Office of the Prince of Wales issued a Tier 1 press release. This is the highest, most authoritative level of official communication, immediately superseding all other palace channels and statements. The contents of the release were brief, cold, and legally binding. It announced an immediate, independent, top-to-bottom audit of the entire Royal Collection Trust. It formally declared that any movement, reclassification, appraisal, or loan of royal assets initiated after midnight on May 1st was officially voided and suspended indefinitely. But it was the final paragraph of the release that completely altered the reality of the situation. The Prince of Wales publicly and formally invited the Crown Prosecution Service to review the recent inventory discrepancies. He did not refer to the missing items as an administrative oversight or a scheduling error. He openly categorized the situation as a matter requiring an active criminal inquiry. In a matter of minutes, the carefully placed narrative in the Telegraph was completely neutralized. The PR spin was rendered entirely useless against the undeniable weight of a formal, public police referral. The situation could no longer be managed through friendly journalists or quiet background briefings over dinner. By officially bringing the Crown Prosecution Service into the fold, William permanently closed the last remaining escape route. The crisis was no longer a private family dispute hidden behind palace gates. It had just become a matter of law. The Prince of Wales believed that his official press release was the final, definitive move. He had successfully seized control of the vaults, dismantled the media narrative, and effectively trapped the Queen Consort's network. But he underestimated the true scope of the betrayal. The most devastating element of this entire operation was not aimed at enriching a family within the quiet corridors of Buckingham Palace. It was engineered to support a completely different agenda, located 8,000 miles away from London. At exactly 10 minutes past 3 this afternoon, the crisis moved from an internal palace lockdown to a highly visible law enforcement action. Plainclothes officers from Scotland Yard's Special Branch moved swiftly through the crowds at Terminal 5 of Heathrow Airport. They converged on Gate 14 and intercepted Thomas Blackwood just minutes before he could board a scheduled one-way flight to Geneva. The former royal archivist did not attempt to resist. He was quietly placed in handcuffs and immediately escorted into a private security holding area. When investigators seized and opened his black leather briefcase, they immediately secured the primary target. Tucked inside a custom-fitted travel pouch was the South African diamond necklace. The 21 massive, brilliant-cut diamonds were completely intact. The artifact was safely recovered. But as investigators processed the rest of the briefcase, they uncovered something far more dangerous than a stolen necklace. Hidden inside a concealed inner folder was a single, highly sophisticated financial document. It was a finalized, anonymous escrow contract managed by the Swiss banking firm UBS. When the Financial Crimes Unit reviewed the paperwork, the numbers on the page triggered an immediate shockwave back in London. The verified deposit amount outlined in the contract matched the private garage appraisal down to the absolute last digit. Exactly £18,450,000. The initial assumption within the palace was that this massive sum was being quietly routed to the Parker Bowles estate. But when authorities finally decoded the routing instructions and the listed beneficiary, the entire reality of the operation shifted. The money was not flowing to Camilla's children. The ultimate recipient of this multi-million-pound shadow fund was a high-profile, exiled royal figure currently residing in Montecito, California. Someone who requires an enormous, continuous influx of capital to sustain a highly publicized lifestyle. The implications of this discovery are staggering. The Queen Consort had not simply attempted a quiet transfer of wealth to her own bloodline. She had actively facilitated a heavily funded financial pipeline to the monarchy's most vocal critics. She had utilized the physical, historical wealth of the late Queen to quietly finance the very individuals who have spent recent years publicly attacking the institution. It was a transatlantic financial alliance forged in absolute secrecy. This revelation has pushed the current crisis far beyond any possibility of an internal resolution. The outrage now radiating from the office of the Prince of Wales is absolute. Just moments ago, aviation monitors confirmed an urgent update. The private jet belonging to the Prince of Wales has requested and received emergency, expedited clearance for takeoff. The destination is not another royal estate or a diplomatic summit in Europe. The flight path is locked directly for Southern California. The final reckoning for this unprecedented breach of trust will not take place in a quiet London drawing room. It is heading directly to American soil. What exactly is William carrying in his secured diplomatic briefcase to present at the gates in Montecito? The fallout from that impending confrontation will permanently alter the modern monarchy, and we will bring you the entire story as it breaks.